Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 493, Top Spies or Secret Agent Games We Do Not Own Yet.
I'm fearful of that.
Yeah. I'm just being realistic.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. Check out their website. They have some amazing products, extremely high quality. We love our Game Toppers. We use them on a weekly basis for all of our game nights. We use them when we record. They are made of military-grade aluminum. They have gorgeous mats to check out, all sorts of accessories, and different sizes that will fit any surface that you have in your game room or in your dining room. Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are the hosts. I'm Douglas Stewart.
I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Lord Logan Howard.
And I am Andy Holiday.
Hey, if you have a second, go and check out our awesome website, meeplenation.com. You can listen to all of our past episodes, read some interesting blogs, take a look at some of our social photos, read more about us, and you can go click on that Patreon link at the top and become a patron of the show. We're actually working really hard on creating some bonus content for the podcast. Head on over there, check that out. Consider becoming a patron and unlocking some of that sweet, sweet content for yourselves.
In fact, if you go to the noble level, I shall refer to you as a lady or lord of Meeple Nation.
Probably worth the cost right there, if I'm being honest.
I'm going to have to go and update that as a pledge.
Yeah, I was going to say, I need to go update my pledge. Please go and check that out. And also, we would love to hear from you. So if you have anything you want to get off your chest, anything that you think should be on our radar, questions, comments, feedback, anything at all, we would love to hear from you. So send us a line at meeplenation@gmail.com.
All right, it is time to talk about some of our gaming highlights. Stuff that we've played over the last week or two. So one that I want to talk about, that I was really excited about, but I don't want to play with you guys ever again, is the game Keepers. Keepers was...
Wait, what game
I love
is
that this is your first highlight, Nathan. This is awesome.
Along the lines of Dixit, you have cards that you're going to put out, and these are all scenery cards. The cards are amazing. They're photographs, and they're all very beautiful photographs. Played with you guys. I even played this game with my wife and my daughter. It fell flat with them, too. I really, really wanted to like this game, but it's just one that is not going to hit the table. And I feel bad.
Not good.
That may be a factor. I didn't hate it. I found the game to be appealing, but not super high on my list. Everybody that I've played it with the exception of Chris Urinko and his son at SaltCon, and they enjoyed it, but everybody I've played it with since, the game is just fizzled. Maybe I'll just take the cards and I'll hang them all on the wall, and that might be the highlight of that game.
Make a nice mosaic or something out of it, right?
The artwork in it is phenomenal.
Yeah, the art was great. The art was great, full stop.
Full stop, yeah, that's it. And that's Keepers. If you're looking for artwork for your wall, I would suggest Keepers.
Well, I want to talk about one that kind of fell flat for me a little bit, but I was still really excited that I got the chance to play it. And that was Legendary, a Marvel deck building game. We were over here for Thursday night game night. Nathan, you busted this out. I think you taught Mike and I that night.
Correct.
I was really grateful that I got to see, because first of all, there's a lot of product for this game.
There's a lot of product.
Tons. And I know they have a lot of different IPs, different ways to play. There's different game modes. And I was excited about just learning the game in general. This was the Marvel version. I am kind of going through that like severe Marvel burnout phase right now.
Right.
However, I still think that the cards thematically were doing interesting things. It just kind of fell flat for me as a deck builder. It just didn't click. I couldn't get any synergy or anything to work. So like I said, I was glad that I played it. It also falls into that semi-cooperative category of game.
Yep.
And I really struggle with that. I just really struggle. You are fighting the main row of villains together. You have to, or everyone gets punished, but somebody's going to win because somebody's going to earn more points than the others. And you have certain card abilities, like I remember specifically the Hulk. And when you play him, it does a bunch of bad stuff to the other players. Even though you're using him to fight the villain on the board, he's doing stuff. Well, actually, the Hulk, even the player who plays him has to take, I think, one of those bad cards.
The wounds, yeah.
The wounds, yeah.
But if I remember correctly, I think he in his set has cards that use wounds as like fuel.
No, that was Wolverine.
Oh, that was Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think that's very thematic, though, right? When the Hulk gets mad and starts to smash, he doesn't...
But he usually doesn't crush the other Avengers.
No, I mean, quite often...
in the comics, Las Vegas can disagree with you.
Yeah. I mean, quite often,
I guess there's some truth to that.
That's the threat is, we want the Hulk, but we want him somewhat contained. They kind of played into the movies quite a bit. Even in the movies, you had the Hulk go Hulk smash in whichever Avengers movie that was. The whole point was trying to contain Banner, but point him in the right direction and then let him loose.
Okay, so I'll give you that one for sure, because you're right. That is thematic. However, as the player who was probably doing the worst at the table, it did kind of back me into that semi-cooperative corner. Okay, my best option is to tank the game rather than try to fight the bad guys. Okay, well, if I can tank the game, at least no one wins, as opposed to you or Mike absolutely destroying me. Kind of the same thing that exists with Dead of Winter.
Yeah, Dead of Winter.
It's that same thing. I just don't like semi-cooperative.
Yeah, it's not my favorite mechanic either. Although I feel like this Legendary, and I enjoy a lot of the Legendary games. And I feel the Marvel Legendary, I didn't hate it. I actually really enjoy the game. And I wish I was recording my plays way back when this game first came out, because I have played a ton of this game. The whole gamut of heroes that are out there and available, you come back to that point, that semi-cooperative point, which is probably why the game doesn't hit the table as often as it used to. Even with new content coming out, that semi-cooperative role...
It's a stinker. It's hard to work around.
It leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it does. Now, all of this said, I would still love to try like Aliens, like 007. I'd love to try that. Legendary Encounters. It's not like I've written it off. I was really glad I got to kind of learn this game. This is kind of a classic in the deck building genre. Yeah, it fizzled a little bit for me, I think mostly because of that semi-cooperative stuff.
We got to get Planet Unknown to the table again. This was the second time we've played this with the asymmetrical abilities. I swear, every time I play this game, I love it even more.
That other side of the board amplified that game considerably.
Oh, it really did. The fact that the planets are all different and have different rules for the planets, and you have different factions that you're playing, so you get a bunch of different potential combinations that you're trying to play with. Limitations based on the planet versus abilities that are on your faction. I really, really like this game. It's moving up my list quickly. That last play was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this expansion, and of course that Lacey Susan cover.
Yeah, I am too. I'm looking forward to owning it because I backed it.
So I hear a rumor that the second printing of it is also coming along. Even if you didn't kickstart it, the chance of you coming across the game in the wild will increase in the near future.
So I'm going to continue the highlights of having good experiences. I had an interesting encounter with a couple of different people about Blood on the Clock Tower, actually. I know that we're in more of a niche, get all the cool, interesting games. Oh yeah, you play Monopoly and stuff like that. And you're like, oh, hold your britches, bud. I got a lot to tell you about. I learned that Blood on the Clock Tower has a very active Discord where they play online all the time.
That wasn't me, by the way.
Wow. Good job, Nathan.
They play online all the time. And the other one was, I was at a party and I was talking to my friend and he was like, yeah, we're playing this game at my sister-in-law's place. It was like Werewolf, but like better. There was like demons and all this other stuff. Blood on the Clock Tower? Yeah, we can't find it anywhere. If I would have cleaned out my car yesterday, I would have had the game and we could have just gone and grabbed it. Kudos for me for actually like cleaning out my car.
Good job, Logan.
Way to miss an opportunity.
I had like 15 games back there.
You know, I have learned that you should never clean your car out of games because that's how you meet people.
True that. Andy had a whole car full of games when we first met, which is what started us talking. His whole car was full.
His whole car was full. It was a cool car.
It was a cool car.
Yeah, I used to comment when people would talk to me about, oh, you're into games. I was like, yeah, chances are there's a game that is on my person or very much near my person at all times. And I usually always had a game in my backpack or at least in the trunk of my car. And after some boards got too hot and bowed, that's no longer a feature of Nathan's car.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. You don't want, especially nowadays. You know, back in the day, you weren't paying near as much money for a board game. Now you're upwards of $100 per game. Yeah, you lose that board unless they have a neoprene mat that isn't going to warp.
Only $100? I was looking at a pretty cool Kickstarter the other day, and that was what turned me off from it. Was $400 and something dollars.
Well, I remember when I bought Twilight Imperium 3rd edition, and my wife about choked when she saw the price tag, and it was like $85. Big, huge box. It was heavy. It looked amazing, and it took a few trips to the game store to get permission to buy it. But I finally bought it. In fact, I may have just gone to the game store without her and bought it. I can't remember.
That's the believable version of that story. Yes.
I think that's what happened.
That sounds like the Andy I know.
So this week, we are discussing our top 5 secret agent games and spy games that we do not currently own. And that means none of us own any of these games. Kind of go through a list of games that we don't own. They're highly rated on BGG and kind of discuss why we don't own those games. Maybe what turned us off of them, or maybe we just hadn't heard about them and they'll end up on Nathan's shelf.
Yeah, we'll see. By the time this episode ends, we'll see what gets ordered. As Logan said before the podcast, we'll order a game, we'll play it, and then maybe on the next news podcast, we'll have kind of like Flip It or Keep It. We'll have a Cold It or Kept It section.
I love that segment, actually.
Yeah,
Cold it or kept it.
Cold it or loved it, cold it, kept it. We'll workshop it.
Yeah. Love this.
Fearful that this is going to be a pricey episode for somebody, and as we go to themes that appeal more to one person than another, I think that person's wallet's going to get beat up. So when we go to any sort of a dungeon delving,
We really should just skip that episode for the sake of Andy.
That's true.
We should just do a Zombicide episode, and he'd be like, "Oh, that's the one I don't own."
yeah, I don't own enough Shadows of Brimstone. I don't own enough Zombicide.
I already have an Excel spreadsheet of all the Shadows of Brimstone stuff that I still have to order. So
There you go.
Such a nerd.
I just saw some stuff on pre-order for Shadows today, so there you go.
yeah.
Well, I'm actually kind of excited to dive into this list because a few of them I've actually played, and I do have some things to, talk about. We don't own them, but my guess is you have also played some of these before.
Some of them, yeah.
So it's not like we're going into this, just like, oh yeah, we've never heard of it, never played it, nothing like that. It's just we don't have these in our collections currently, and we kind of want to get to the bottom of why.
And there is going to be some that we've never heard of or we never played.
Yeah, for sure.
To compile this list, I went to BGG, put in the category Spies and Secret Agent games, put in the rating level. I selected games that had a rating level anywhere between 10, which is a perfect game, to 7, which is still very highly rated. And I found when I made that list that there was a lot of games one person had ranked as a 10 and nobody else had. So I was like, okay, I got to throw that factor out. So I put in also that the game had to be rated by at least 2,000 people. That compiled this list, and I took the top 35 games, and then I removed from that list games that we all owned, which left us with a list of 17 games. So I guess out of the top 35, we as a collective own... why did I do math on the fly?
I don't know.
18?
But it's 18.
Thank you. I'm going to read just the top 10 of these real quick. Pandemic Legacy Season 0, we own. Battlestar Galactica, the board game, the Daybreak expansion. PAX Pamir 2nd edition, that's one that we don't own, so that's on our list. Number 4, Battlestar Galactica, the board game, Exodus expansion. Number 5, Mind Management, the psychic espionage game. Number 6, Turing Machine. Number 7, Battlestar Galactica, the board game, Pegasus expansion. Number 8, Decrypto. Number 9, Battlestar Galactica, the board game. Number 10, the second one to make our list, Sherlock Holmes, Consulting Detective, The Thames Murder, and Other Cases. So going to our list of 17 games, let's start with PAX Pamir.
In PAX Premiere, players assume the role of 19th century Afghan leaders attempting to forge a new state after the collapse of the Durrani Empire. Western histories often call this period the Great Game because of the role played by the Europeans who attempted to use Central Asia as a theater for their own rivalries. In this game, those empires are viewed strictly from the perspective of the Afghans who sought to manipulate the interloping foreigners.
Reading some reviews that actually they have on Amazon because it's still available. $95. You can get it like 1-day delivery. Area control, negotiation, best player counts 3 to 4. Seems like a pretty area control-esque type game with the negotiations.
So PAX Premiere, this is definitely a game that I have heard of. This, for me, falls into the category, and I don't know that there's a lot of the others on this list that do this, but this, for me, falls into the category of game that I have absolutely had. I've been sort of turned off from it because of other podcasts, because of media. You know, watching YouTube channels, listening to other podcasts. I've heard this game talked about. Honestly, it gets a lot of praise. I think people really like this game. I think that this is probably a technically very, very good game. But when I hear it talked about, I'm just like, yeah, I don't think that game's for me. Just mechanically and the way it all comes together, it just, even though people are talking about it positively, I'm just kind of like, I don't think that's a game I would enjoy.
It has a lot of those things in there that I like. The tableau building, drafting cards, buying cards out of the auction or the court in the middle of the table. All those things kind of sound good, but for some reason when they came together, this just didn't blip on my radar. I saw it, I've heard of it, but it was just something that didn't intrigue me. And for some people, and like you said, it has a ton of praise. And for some people, they really enjoy this game.
This is one that if we went to a convention and somebody who knows it really well and can teach it really well wanted to sit down and play it, I would probably jump at the opportunity. It's not one I'm going to take a risk buying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody would kind of need to come to me and be like, hey, this is a great game. I'd like to teach it to you. And I wouldn't balk at that opportunity, but it's also not one I'm going to go out and seek. That's kind of where this game falls for me.
I'm not a huge fan of the auction mechanic in games. You know, and I own a few games that have that mechanic and they're okay, but it's not like I think about Lizard Wizard, for example. It has the auction mechanic in it. I love that game. The auction mechanic is my least favorite part of that game. One of the biggest reasons is it drags the game on longer than I feel like it should with just bidding on a card rather than just, hey, that card's available, I'm going to buy it. And I would much rather have that mechanic in there where I can just purchase a card if I need to buy a card rather than have to fight somebody for it. I mean, I get that there's, you know, the resource management or that goes along with an auction mechanic where you're trying to reserve your gold to buy a card or to outbid somebody. But it's just not one that I really enjoy and have fun with. Typically, anything that has an auction mechanic for me is one that I'm kind of shy away from. Kind of depends on how big of a part of the game that mechanic really is. If it's just a minor thing, okay, then I can look past it. But if it's a huge part of the game, I'm usually, I'll pass.
I'm going to go back to what you said, Doug. I think if this was a game that we went to a convention, say BGG Con, where we're not necessarily committed to hosting events, and somebody was willing to sit down, teach us who knew the game and who knew the game well, I don't want another Gollum issue.
Yeah, no one wants that.
In an environment like that, where we had the opportunity to be taught the game by somebody who knows it, I would love to give this game a chance. But this is not a game that I would want to check out of the library, even read the rules beforehand, and then attempt to play it there. This is a game that, if I was going to give it a try, I would rather it be taught to me.
If this was going to be another Golem experience, I would probably play it.
Just to have that same experience.
Yes, with Nathan specifically.
The final thing I'll say about PAX Premiere 2, the designer of this game is Cole Horrell. He is a very loved, very good game designer. I struggle with his stuff because he also did Root and Oath, and I did not care for either one of those games either.
Oh, really? I've only played Oath the one time, and it was okay, but I really like Root.
And I just couldn't get it to go for me. Didn't take off. That is PAX Premiere. And the next one on the list is Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, The Thames Murders and Other Cases.
Have you ever had the desire to walk the streets of Victorian London with Sherlock Holmes in search of Professor Moriarty? To search the docks for the giant rat of Samarta? To walk up Baker Street in the fog rolling in and hear Holmes cry out, "Come, Watson, come! The game is afoot." Well, now you can, You can capture the mystery and excitement of Holmes in this challenging and informative game. You, the player, will match your detective abilities against your opponent and the master sleuth himself, Sherlock Holmes. Going through and reading some of the mechanics, I would actually be very interested in this game. It's more Chronicles of Crime-esque. I think it has less mechanics and more props.
Yeah, so this is going to be a fully cooperative game, a game of deduction. You're reading paragraphs, making choices, leading you to more reading and storytelling and more choices. Trying to deduce whodunit is kind of what I'm gathering from it.
Yeah.
As far as, it seems like a party game to me, but it seems like a party game I would be willing to play.
Well, I guess by party game, it does go up to 8 people. It's in the same genre as Bureau of Investigation, Investigations in Arkham and Elsewhere. And so I think this is actually a game that you guys will enjoy. Based on the Arkham theme, I think everybody here will enjoy this game. Going right along the mold of these Sherlock Holmes games, the Bureau of Investigation is a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective game. I think all of these are going to be similar. Having not read the rules for this one or played any of these ones, the second one that's on the list, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, Jack the Ripper, and West End Adventures, both of them made the list of games that we don't own, but it is a deduction game where you're together going through almost that choose-your-own-adventure, Chronicles of Crime mixture without the app. But this is just, you're solving the mystery, right? You're following the plan, however that mystery goes, whether it goes, you're following a red herring or whatever you're doing is just by deduction and reading.
I'm wondering if this is going to fall into that same category as Chronicles of Crime with player count. It goes up to 8 players, but gosh, it almost sounds like it would be better with 3 or 4 at the table.
That is one of the things that I think has made me hesitant. I love Sherlock Holmes. I love this theme. I have considered purchasing this before. I already have games like Chronicles of Crime or even the Unlock series games that don't get played, these kind of deduction style games. And so I just haven't ventured into those waters with this, even though I have heard amazing things about it. That is the reason why I haven't personally kind of pulled the trigger on it. I get what you're saying about it being a party game, but I don't think this is like the light, frivolous style of party game. I think it's mostly just the player count. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I may retract that. Looking at this, it's so on BGG, it's saying it's best with 2 players. So a game that's best with 2 players probably is not a party game. In fact, it may be a game I potentially could play with my wife if she would actually be up for it, because that would be something that would be right up her alley. So
my other hesitation with this just a little bit, and I've only heard just here and there that this can be, right? There's multiple versions of this Sherlock Holmes series, and I know that some of them can be quite difficult. That's is my understanding. And I already have games like Unlock that make me feel like an idiot. So, getting one of these heavier ones to the table where I'm like supposed to be deducing and supposed to be super genius about putting all these clues together and stuff, I kind of worry about the experience being ruined just because I'm not very good at that type of game.
You should play it with Andy then, because I've played some of the Unlock games with Andy. Really interesting just to see his mind go for things. Because I'm the same way as you, Doug. I enjoy the experience, but my mind just doesn't solve the mysteries in the same way. But Andy, to see his mind just go, oh yeah, this is over here. And I'm just like, wow. So it'd be an experience just to see Andy play.
I think that's why a lot of these games have the higher player count, is because sometimes something sticks out to one person that is completely oblivious to somebody else. It's like going into an escape room and you go in with a higher player count. Yeah, sure, you might have an experience where you go with Dennis and Dennis just does everything and everybody else is just watching Dennis do everything. Or you go into an escape room where it takes everybody going through and finding stuff, bringing stuff, putting it together, and as a group finding all that out.
Well, and I think that's up to the individual, right, to get involved in games like that. But I go back to our experience with Break Into Alcatraz. We had a lot of people at the table. It was one of those where we talked about that previously on the podcast. In fact, last week, those are hard and the clues are very obscure. And even with all the people at the table, we still couldn't figure it out. People kind of got disinterested quickly. So I kind of understand where you're going with, Doug. If it's really difficult, I can see that falling flat, but it's highly rated. So maybe it doesn't quite easy enough to figure out, but not kind of in line with the break-in games that the experiences we've had. But it would be interesting to try. So I'm glad that you have a version of it, Nathan, so we can try it.
It's not a version of these two. It is in that same genre.
Yeah, and it has the Arkham theme, which I'm super into, so I really want to play this one a lot.
Yeah,
I was going to say Arkham over Victorian.
I think that theme appealed to everyone here, so that was also why it made the shopping cart.
So we're adding that onto our Kohler loved it list then. In lieu of Sherlock Holmes, we will actually play a game off the shelf.
We'll see.
Yeah. No promises. There are no promises made here at Meeple Nation.
All right, so our number 3 on the list is called Earth Reborn. After 500 years, 2 factions emerged from their underground cities into a new world, an Earth reborn from nuclear disaster. 12 highly detailed miniatures are going to represent 2 factions in this game. You have NORAD, the military in thinking and origins. Scientists and engineers add to their strength. Selmites are occultists working with cadavers and bringing the dead back to life. Soon after emerging, these 2 factions meet, and it is determined that they cannot live together in peace.
So the name alone excited me. I was interested in this game when I was looking at the list. And then I look at the player count, 2 to 4. I guess great. I would love to have 5 players. And then I got to the playtime. 3 hours.
Yeah, 3 hours and best at 2.
And best at 2.
Mostly a head-to-head style game. I've got enough of those.
Pretty heavy game, 3.89 out of 5.
Yeah.
Again, it's just not going to hit my table, one that I passed. But I did look at it, and I did look at it wantingly at first, just by name alone. The name and the theme appealed to me. The time commitment and just some of the mechanics in it just didn't appeal to me. So there's other games out there that fit the niche, that scratch the itch, appeal better.
Yeah, this one has not been my radar, and even talking about it right now, it still kind of doesn't. I'm ready to move on already.
Yeah, it's one I would probably enjoy, but it's also one I would probably want to set up on a table and play over multiple days as I have time. Honestly, that kind of time commitment to a game anymore is not super appealing to me.
It's difficult.
It is.
It's really difficult. There's a lot of games on all of our shelves that we can bust out and do that with before we feel the need to pull the trigger on something like this.
For sure. I remember when I was in my 20s buying a game, honestly, that's one of the things I look for. Oh, 3 hours? Awesome. Yes, that's what I'm looking for, right? Half hour, 45 minutes, heck with that. That doesn't sound fun at all. And it has definitely switched. I'm much more into like an hour and a half tops.
I hear his words, I see his lips moving, and all I can hear is shadows of brimstone.
There are exceptions.
Yeah, I think with everything Andy says, there's a little asterisk afterward, and the subtext is, except in the case of dungeon crawlers.
Yes, that's true.
You just have to always take that little grain with anything Andy says. The number 4 on our list was another Sherlock Holmes consulting detective game. This was Jack the Ripper and West End Adventures. And I think for all the same reasons that we already mentioned, it's just not really on our list, but we might check it out, especially if we like this Arkham game. Number 5 game on our list is Secret Hitler.
Now, this is a party game, Andy.
Yeah, this is a party game. Secret Hitler is a dramatic game of political intrigue and betrayal set in 1930s Germany. Each player is randomly and secretly assigned to be a liberal or a fascist, and one player is Secret Hitler. The fascists coordinate to sow distrust and install their cold-blooded leader. The liberals must find and stop the Secret Hitler before it's too late. The liberal team always has a majority. I have played Secret Hitler. I don't like it. I don't like social deduction games in general. And if I'm going to play one, I would so much rather play something like Feed the Kraken. Yeah, this one was not an enjoyable experience for me. So I have played it and I just don't ever want to again.
Yeah, I played Secret Hitler as well, and it didn't shine for me at all. I mean, there's other games in the genre that appeal far greater than this game. I just don't like the game. A hard pass on that. I know the game has a huge following. A lot of people love this game. This is their favorite social deduction game. I'm glad they enjoy it. I don't.
I have games that are very similar in theme and vein of this game that I would much rather play because maybe I had those games before and I just have a preference. I'd much rather play Salem, recreate the loudest shouting match I've had in a board game in years at Andy's house. Werewolf, Blood on the Clock Tower. I already got so many games, and with those games in particular, you can add separate roles in, you change the game experience to where you can't do that with this. It's the exact same thing over and over and over again.
No, you're right, Logan. I agree with you.
So I would probably treat this like I do pretty much any other social deduction game and go play Planet Unknown or Descent or
Yeah, I was going to say, don't lie. Throw out a dungeon crawler.
Shadows of Brimstone or Monopoly. I mean, really anything else besides a social deduction game?
I'd go read rules.
Yeah. For sure. Yep. Just not doing anything for us, I don't think.
The next one on the list, Black Orchestra. As Hitler's grasp on Germany tightens and his maniacal fervor is unmasked, men from the highest levels of the Reich begin to plot his assassination. As the clock ticks and Hitler's ambitions grow, these daring few must build their strength and prepare for the perfect moment to strike. The Gestapo hound their trail, calling these conspirators the Black Orchestra. Will this band of daring patriots save their country from utter ruin before it is too late? It's 1 to 5 players, best at 3, 90 minutes. I'm intrigued. If there's one that's going to come close to my shopping basket, so far it's this one.
Tech trees in it. It has set collection, which is cool. We like the pick up and deliver style games, and it has that in it. It actually does sound like it could be pretty fun.
And pressure luck.
And pressure luck.
I love a game with pressure luck.
Yes, you do. That's because you're lucky, especially if there are dice involved.
Because D6 love me.
They do. Jerk.
So this is available on Amazon. It's right around that $60 price range. So maybe it is something that we look at and see if we can put that in our cull it or keep it.
Not only that, it has variable player powers, which asymmetrical player powers, I'm all about that as well.
This does look like a very text-heavy game. I'm looking at some of the components and stuff, and, be prepared to read. Also, just not the most gorgeous-looking game. How do you make tech trees and maps look super amazing on the table? But I would be interested in giving this a go.
Has a weight of 2.41 out of 5, so even with all that text, it's got to be fairly simple, I would think.
So the next one on our list is Burgle Bros. Burgle Bros is a cooperative game for 1 to 4 players. Players are unique members of a crew trying to pull off a robbery in a highly secure building without getting caught. The building has 3 floors, 4x4 tiles, each with its own safe to crack. Players start on the first floor and have to escape to their helicopter waiting on the roof. Just what I'm reading, kind of like Magic Maze, to the point of movement, cracking the safe, moving on. You're just trying to coordinate the movement, your movement, and the guard's movement.
Okay, so here's the thing about Burgle Bros. You're exactly right, and I think that's what it is. It seems like a really fun game. This is a Tim Fowers game, which makes me excited. I really like Tim Fowers, and I like his stuff.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
I thought you owned this, Nathan. I thought you had this.
No, I don't own it. I've played it.
Okay, well, I soon will. That's the only reason I haven't bought this is because I thought it was on the shelf, and I've just been waiting.
It's one I've played. I didn't really care for it. Its table presence is really pretty cool. There's a lot of people who've kind of tricked out their game, stacked up those levels so that each floor is actually stacked above the other. There's STLs out there, I'm sure, that you can find and download for fairly cheap and then just print them yourself to get it to work. The game, I believe, might even come with a cardboard version of it. It's a game of cat and mouse where you're trying to escape, get to the safe before you get caught. Not a bad game by any means, but not on my top 5.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I think I'm going to add this to my list.
A lot of the cat and mouse games that we've talked about during this topic have been a one versus many, whereas this is a fully cooperative game. I think that's also kind of unique with this one, with that cat and mouse feel to it, where you're not playing against a specific player. There's specific things that will trigger whether you get caught or not with the tokens and your stealth tokens and everything else. All right, our number 8 is a game called A War of Whispers. It is a competitive board game for 2 to 4 players. 5 mighty empires are at war for the world, but you are no mighty ruler. Instead, you play a secret society that is betting on the results of this war while pulling the strings to rig the results and ensure their bets pay off. A War of Whispers is a game of deep strategy, hidden agendas, and shifting loyalties.
Boy, is it ever. This is actually a great game. I have played this. I have a friend, Chandler. I don't know if you remember him. So he has this game. Taught it to us quite a while back. I mean, this has been out for a few years, and we played it when it had first kind of hit shelves. He got a deluxe edition of this game. I've just kind of been holding out to find my own deluxe edition copy. I really like the components that are in that, but if I can find one, I'm absolutely going to pull the trigger because this is a great game. War of Whispers is awesome.
I'm actually really happy to hear that. Mistborn, the War of the Houses. The description sounded very much like that. Thematically, the game just didn't resonate with me because I wanted to be the hero of the story, not the houses trying to snuggle up to whoever was going to win.
They're both very different games, and I can see from the description what you're saying. Mechanically, they play out totally different. And War of Whispers, the middle is just the map, and then you kind of have the action selection kind of around the ring. It's a circular board. But this also has some really cool card play. You can use the cards to manipulate, and that's the thing. This game is just all about manipulating what's happening out there. It's not necessarily that you care who wins or loses. In an area control game, you want to be the one in control. This, you don't necessarily want to be the one in control. You're not controlling anything in the middle. That stuff's happening. You're trying to manipulate things in the middle so that you can score the most points. It's done very well. Artistically, it's good. The components are good, and the gameplay is good. And as I recall, it wasn't very long. I mean, this plays fairly short. I think it took about an hour to play.
Yeah, it says 30 to 60 minutes. I'm glad that you've played it to get some firsthand feedback, because I would have been turned off right out of the gates with the area majority influence, because that's typically something I don't enjoy so
Agreed.
much.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And then betting and bluffing, which are also two things I don't typically enjoy in games.
That makes a game really good, though.
Nathan's all about this.
Yeah.
I know, Nathan, you do like the betting and bluffing. I typically don't.
So this is not the kind of betting and bluffing that you're going to get out of a game like Sheriff of Nottingham. This is just like, played this card, no one knows about it, and no one needs to. The things that it does or whatever. And it has been a really long time since I've played. So, people who are more familiar with it don't cringe too much as I'm trying to explain some of the stuff in this game, because I don't remember exactly how it's played. But the bluffing is not that like I'm lying to your face across the table kind of thing. It's more trying to just kind of keep your cards hidden and your alliance secret.
So an atypical mechanic for bluffing, not necessarily what you would think of as stereotypical bluffing.
Yeah, I'm not going to hand you a bag full of cards and be like, these are all just chickens, Andy. Don't look at my bag.
And that's War of Whispers.
Numbers 9, 10, and 11 on our list were all Smash Up games. This is Smash Up Science Fiction Double Feature, Smash Up Awesome Level 9000, and Smash Up The Big Geeky Box.
So all of these just have a spy character in the expansions. So, Andy, you own Smash Up, right?
I do.
So how is it? This is one, I've obviously heard of it. It hasn't ever been something I've been very interested in.
It's fun. It does not hit the table very often, and there's a lot of content for Smash Up. I've played it with my kids. It didn't resonate with them at all, which is probably why it hasn't really hit the table. It's kind of cool because you're basically combining powers of two different factions or whatever. If I recall, it's been a couple years since I've played it, but so when you're adding content like this, you're just adding more options and more variability and more replayability, which I think is cool. But the gameplay, it was okay. I had played it once with Dennis, had brought it up to one of our family reunions, and we had played it at that point, and I liked it enough to buy it, but then my kids didn't care for it, so it kind of gets a
Yeah, and just hearing about it, that's kind of what it gets from me too. Just kind of
Yeah.
But maybe because is it filler game territory?
Yeah, it plays in 30 to 45 minutes. So not really a filler game. It depends on what the other table's playing and how much time they have and how many players are playing.
If it was a little shorter, it would definitely be one that I'd want to just check out for 20 minutes just to see. Maybe we'll get around to it someday.
We should get it back out and have you guys try it at least.
At least sample it.
Since I do own the base game.
All right, number 12 and number 15 are two versions of the same game, A Study in Emerald.
A Study in Emerald is a game for 2 to 5 players based on the award-winning short story of the same name by Neil Gaiman. In this stylistic mashup of Sherlock Holmes and H.P. Lovecraft, that intrigues me. The worst has already happened and the world is now ruled by the old ones. However, the secret war is being fought to free mankind from their servitude. The game, A Study in Emerald, fleshes out this core idea by including historical figures from the late 19th century, most being persons involved in the anarchist movement of the time.
So this is a game I have played. I actually went to look to pick it up, and it is available. It does have a heavy price tag of $125, so not one hitting my shopping cart anytime soon. But I will keep an eye out for this at any sort of a swap meet or any sort of game convention, game swap area. Study of Emerald deck building at its core. You're trying to fight against the old ones. And I think all of you guys will really love the theme because, I mean, the old ones have come, they're in charge, and this is a game of kind of revolution of those who are fighting against the old ones. The theme-wise, sure hit for all of you guys, and I think some of the mechanics in it, the deck building, pool building, hand management, all those mechanics work for our group. Very much one that we should find and pick up at some point. So if any one of us sees it in the wild, is a game I would strongly recommend that we pick up.
And it looks like with the second edition, they simplified it quite a bit. So it's not near as heavy.
Yeah, it's not near as heavy. You shave off at least 30 minutes of the playtime.
I like a lot of Neil Gaiman's work. This book has been on my list. The book that this is based on has been on my want to read list for quite some time. And I think maybe I've just been kind of waiting to read the book before I made a judgment call on whether or not I'd like the game. It's definitely not one I would turn down.
Dark Moon. Welcome to Dark Moon. The Noguchi Masaki Interplanetary Mining Corporation welcomes you to its outpost on Titan, the Dark Moon of Saturn. You will be joining an experienced crew of miners, technicians, and adventurous souls who live to experience all the wonders that our solar system has to offer. Purpose, loyalty, camaraderie, friendship, and sacrifice all await you as a new and valued member of the Noguchi Masaki family. So this was formerly known as Battlestar Galactica Express.
So I used to own this game, and the reason I own this game is because it was formerly known as Battlestar Galactica Express. It was supposed to be a simple version of BSG and have all those elements and all that fun, but just in a shorter game, and I didn't find that at all. And so
Really?
that's why I ended up culling the game. It wasn't a bad game, and there are similarities for sure, but I don't feel like the game condensed Battlestar Galactica into a 60-minute game. It was that 60-minute game. For me, it just didn't feel like Battlestar Galactica. It kind of just became a disappointment and was eventually culled.
You played it and you're like, I would have rather played Battlestar Galactica for 3 hours instead of the hour I played this.
Absolutely. And I played this a dozen times maybe. Tried to give it the love that it deserved because I really do enjoy Battlestar Galactica, one of my favorite all-time hidden role games. Dark Moon was a good game by itself, but just not one that really hit my table.
And just to clarify, you've never seen the show,
Correct.
but absolutely love the game. So
Correct.
all of your experiences you're looking for are based off of the game.
Correct.
That's awesome.
Indeed.
I've never heard of this, and I had no idea it had that history or anything like that. I've been thumbing through some of the images here on BGG. I will say that, this is an old game. This is a 2011 game. It looks like it has some of those old design sensibilities a little bit, which doesn't intrigue me a lot. But if the time was right at the right convention, or if somebody wanted to bust it out, or if you ever got back into it or something, I wouldn't say no. It just doesn't really make my radar.
This is one that I could definitely reread the rules and we could play at a convention for sure. But not one that I'm looking to buy again. Rebuy?
Yeah.
Uncull? Uncull.
2 rooms and a boom.
The next one on our list is definitely a party game, Andy, and one that you will despise 100% completely, and one that I enjoy, but as far as these deduction games go, not my favorite. I've played this at BGG Con. I've played it at SaltCon. Our good friend Brent Mayer, former host, owns this game. The premise of the game is you have 2 groups, and they're going to go into 2 different rooms, and everybody has a card, and they have hidden information on that card. Mingle in the room. You can try to assess other people's identities. You can get people that will peek at your card so you can show them what color it is or the name alone. Just try to divvy out some information. The main goal of the game, the good guys, you want to make sure that the president is in one room and the bomb is in a different room. And if you're part of the terrorist group, you want to make sure that the bomb and the president are in the same room at the end of the third round or at the end of the final round. You get the right group, this game can be a blast. My experience in BGG playing with people who are hardcore 2-room and a boomers, it was very hard for me as a first-time player to kind of mingle with that group. Not to say that they were snobby, but they were just after exact information, and if you weren't playing exactly like they wanted to, they're like, it very much became a spectator game for me. I did have an enjoyable time playing it at SaltCon, where you didn't have the regular players that were at BGG, but still an enjoyable game, but not one that I would run to buy.
Yeah, this would be a hard pass for me.
I figured it would.
Yeah, I think for me too.
I figured it would. Logan, I think you would somewhat like it.
I think the hidden role games have come a lot because, like, one of my big critiques of some game like Werewolf, I just said a thing, and now, because I was the first person that say it, that's my defense. And that's what a lot of these old hidden role games go back to, is that there's no way to prove or disprove any knowledge.
And this one's a little bit different because at the end of each round, the leader in each room has to swap prisoners. And that's how the prisoners shift. The leader of one room is going to send over a person, and the leader of the other room is going to swap out a person. The shifting happens, and so they're trying to get information from the room, whether they are on the terrorist or the good guys. Very interesting to noodle out. It takes people that are very familiar with it to make the game go smooth.
The next one on our list, number 16, is Cold War, CIA versus KGB. World War II has left the world in upheaval, and many nations' futures are filled with uncertainty. The USA and the USSR are the only superpowers who can lead the world toward a better future. This game looks old and boring. Changed my mind.
It is a 2-player game, which I guess could be in its favor. 30 to 60
light.
minutes.
Only a 1.85.
And so it could be fun, but yeah, it is not on my radar at all.
I even was reading up on the re-implemented by a Star Wars version, and I got distracted and started looking up something else.
Oh, that's number 16, Cold War, USA versus KGB.
And the last one on our list is a game called Incognito. This game came out in 1988. So it has been around for a day or two. 3 to 5 players, about 90 minutes to play, but actually appears to be readily available. Shows up on Noble Knight Games for $39.95. The goal of each knight in Incognito is to complete a mission together with his partner. At the beginning of the game, however, players do not know which missions they must fulfill. Each player guides one of 4 secret agents. The 4 characters are allied in pairs. Lord Fiddlebottom and Colonel Bubble are always partnered against Agent X and Madame Zaza. Each of the 4 agents is represented by one of the 4 different figures with different builds: tall, short, fat, thin. Only one of them represents the actual character controlled by the player. The other 3 figures represent spies who are friendly to him and that are trying to confuse the opposition. I see the appeal, but I think it's one that, while at the same time cast confusion, try to identify, because you got to team up with your partner in order to complete your mission. The board looks a little bit dated.
It looks a lot dated.
It's got a creepy nun.
Yes.
I'm looking at one of the screenshots on BGG, and it's like mostly features the board, but like the tablecloth is totally something from the late 80s. The clothing that the people are wearing are totally from that era as well. This is like a blast from the past here.
And the nun is very 1980s nun, too.
100%.
Well, it is definitely not a nun. When you first glance at it, very much looks like a nun.
Yeah,
It's
prove
not
me wrong with that picture. I don't think you can.
It's not a plague mask, but it's a masquerade mask that
It almost looks like a V for Vendetta mask. That's what it reminds me
It's
of.
supposed to be.
it's very similar to that feel. It could be a very fun game, but yeah, you're right. It does look very dated.
Not a lot of mechanics in this game, though. It seems very simple. Really not much to it.
1988, most of the games didn't have a ton of depth to them.
Yeah, you're just going to spin and move, spin and move, spin and move.
And that's our list of spies and secret agent games that we don't own. And I think our wallets waltzed away from this one in fairly good shape. There's a few on this list that we might keep our eye out for, and I think maybe 1 or 2 that between us we might pick up for sure. Other than that, I'm kind of okay with not having played most of these games.
Yeah, I think so too.
Black Orchestra was the only one that really kind of hit my radar. And then we'll see what happens after we play this Bureau of Investigation game.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely going to look for a copy of Burgle Bros and probably the collector's edition of War of Whispers. I would like to play that with you guys. I think you'll like it.
And we'll have to get Smash up to the table.
Yeah.
So, give it a shot. Some homework that's going to come out of this for sure. Tell us what you think of this format of this episode where we talk about games that we don't own and why we don't. Give us a shout out at meeplenation@gmail.com.
Until next time.
We'll see you at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community. Calling these conspirators... Oh, damn.
Schwarzekapelle! no idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't make it sound Italian when you say it.
Yeah, it's not. Well, yeah. Say it with it. Schwarzekapelle. Oh my goodness.
Mozzarella!
Yeah.
Yes, get more Klingon in there.
Translated meaning the Black Orchestra.
Calling these conspirators the Black Orchestra.